The third thing I learned was that most of the things that we think are true about motivation simply are not true. That there are a tremendous number of myths and misconceptions about student motivation out there, and I think that's probably an appropriate way to begin the lecture today, is talking about myths and misconceptions, things that people think are true about student motivation that simply are not true. And probably the most common one, the one I hear most often, is this: "Oh, Danny, nothing motivates that kid. This kid is totally unmotivated." Folks, you got to promise me you'll never say that again. Because if you say to someone who truly understands human motivation, "This kid is totally unmotivated," you've demonstrated a fairly sad lack of information about human motivation. Because one of the most important things to understand about motivation is simply this: all human behavior is motivated. Except blood running through your veins and your heart beating, every human behavior is motivated. If someone stands up and walks out of my lecture right now, I can't say she's not motivated. She was motivated to walk out. That was her motivation. That kid who sits in your 5th grade class with his head on the desk, don't tell me he's not motivated. He's motivated to sit there with his head on the desk. And I learned this, my travels on the road, I've been introduced to some amazing people, and listen to this story in terms of all human behavior is motivated. I was speaking in the Midwest a couple of years ago about motivation, and this young man came up to me and he said, "I got a story for you, and you're welcome to use it." Listen to this. It was a difficult story for him to get through. He was about 24, 25 years old. And he said, "Rick," he said, "my father left my life when I was in the 3rd grade. I got up one morning, I went downstairs, he had packed up his stuff and gone." He said that was 17 or 18 years ago. He said, "I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's alive or dead." He said, "And God help me, I don't care." He was a horrible, horrible person. And I didn't realize it at the time, but now in retrospect, I realize the day he left my life was probably the best day of my life. He was a terrible person who made my life miserable, my 3 brothers' lives miserable, and my mom's life miserable. He said, "And I was the youngest and the smallest of 4 boys. And because I was the youngest and the smallest, my father used to beat me." And he said he didn't need a reason to beat me. We'd be sitting at the dinner table, he'd reach across the table and slap me in the face. He didn't need a reason to beat me, but generally when he beat me, he'd been drinking, and he'd beat me in the kitchen or in the living room, and I could get away. I could run outside and wait till he fell asleep. He said, but when I did something wrong or made a mistake, I used to get what my brothers and I called a bathroom beating. This was a bathroom beating. My father would take me, drag me into the bathroom, close the door behind us, and beat me till he got tired of beating me. He said, and in a bathroom beating, you couldn't get away. You ran in the closet, he was there. You ran behind the toilet, he was there. You jumped in the shower, he was there. He said, that was a bathroom beating. That's what you got when you made a mistake or did something wrong. He said, and in the 1st grade, I couldn't read. He said, I just couldn't break the code. And I was so embarrassed I couldn't read. He said, and the way they used to teach reading in my school district in those days was that Mrs. Donovan, every other Thursday, on alternate Thursdays, just after recess, Mrs. Donovan, the reading specialist from the district, would come to school and take the 1st graders who couldn't read and make them come to the front of the class and read out loud in front of the other kids. He said, and that used to embarrass me so much. Listen to this, folks. He said, that used to embarrass me so much that every other Thursday during recess, just before Mrs. Donovan came, I'd go into the boys' room and I'd take my reading glasses and I'd twist them till they broke. Or I tapped the lens against the sink until the lens cracked. So when Mrs. Donovan came in, I'd hold the glasses and I'd say, Mrs. Donovan, I can't read today, my glasses are broken. He said, and I did that every other Thursday for 5 months of 1st grade with the full knowledge that when I got home and showed my parents the broken glasses, I was going to get a bathroom beating for it. You know the saddest part of that story? I'll bet if you look at that kid's records, Mrs. Donovan wrote down someplace, this kid is not motivated. I mean, she must have known he was doing it on purpose. You don't break your glasses 10 times in 5 months without doing it on purpose. Not motivated? I would submit to you that kid was probably the most motivated child she'll ever have in her career. He was so motivated to avoid being embarrassed. He was willing to take a beating from a grown man twice a month. That's motivation, Jack. That is big-time motivation. All human behavior is motivated. So it's appropriate to say this kid's not motivated to do what I want him to do. But don't say he's not motivated, because all human behavior is motivated. The second myth that we hear is one day he's motivated, the next day he's not. No, motivation is what we call a relative constant. That is to say, if the child is motivated to learn math, he's motivated every day. If he's not motivated, he's not motivated every day. It's as simple as that. Now, his behavior may change from day to day. His performance and his progress may change from day to day for reasons we're going to talk about, but the motivation is a constant. And let me give you an analogy, the only analogy I can come up with that kind of works for this. It's kind of like love. You're a wife. You love your husband very much. Your love for him is right up here. You love him very much. Now, some days are better than others. And some days there's trouble in paradise, okay? But the love is a constant. So suppose you love your husband this much, but you had a difficult morning with him this morning and you're angry at him right now and you're feeling right about here. But God forbid, if you got a call that he was injured at work or something, or was in the hospital, you'd be the first one at the hospital holding his hand, because the love is a constant. Even though day to day there may be changes, the love is a constant. And that's the way it is for motivation. And that's why it's so frustrating for many of our kids. They want to learn math, and some days they can and some days they can't.